Today you're going to be completing an assessment on natural hazards. Specifically, this assessment is to do with weather hazards. As always, you'll be given a mark and a percentage as well as a GCSE grade for this exam paper. If we look further down, your teacher will also list the questions with specific aspects that you've done well, and the same with areas for improvement. Your teacher will also rag, so whether your question has scored a red, amber or green for each specific question. So there are 9 questions in this exam paper plus your SPAG. As always, you're going to answer questions using black ink or a black ballpoint pen. You answer all the questions, you provide the answers in the spaces provided, you cross through any work you do not want to be marked, then have your marks for each question shown in brackets. It's out of 40, and just be mindful that spelling, punctuation and grammar today are in questions 8 and questions 9. So let's start. So, question 1. What is a natural hazard? First thing we have to think about was, what does the word natural mean? Okay, we usually refer to the word natural when we're thinking about things that are not man-made, so things like trees, okay? Then think to yourself, what is a hazard? So usually a hazard is to do with some kind of impact or effect. Now it's worth 1 mark, which means you have to give 1 statement, hence why you only have 1 space of line provided. So think to yourself, what is a natural hazard? And just write a sentence. Question 2. We need to outline 1 possible reason for people living in a hazardous area. So now we have to think about, what is a hazardous area? Well, a hazardous area, as I said before with hazards, is something which usually has some kind of effect. Now, the effect could be positive, it could also be negative. But we're thinking about in terms today of natural hazards. Okay, for example, weather hazards. So, 1 possible reason. So think about why someone would want to live in an area that has a particular hazard, a natural hazard, like a weather hazard. Could it be to do with anything to do with money? Could it be to do with family? Could it be to do with a job? Now, outline is for you to give the reason, so 1 statement, and then you need to give the reason. So why? Why does that person still live there even though it's hazardous? 2 marks, 1 for the statement and 1 for the outlined reason why. Now, if we go down, question 3 requires you to study figure 1. Now, figure 1 is this map below us. So this is a map showing the track or the path, as well as the strength, usually referring to wind speed, of a tropical storm. Now remember, a tropical storm is a weather hazard. Now there are 4 different names for tropical storms. In the Northern Atlantic and the Southern Atlantic, they are known as hurricanes. In the Pacific Ocean North, they are known as typhoons. And in the Southern Indian Ocean, they are known as cyclones. There's also a very special name for them in Australia, but I'm going to let you Google that one so you can figure that one out yourself. So if we look at this figure, we have our storm category. Now we know that tropical storms are measured in terms of how intense and how strong they are, 5 being the highest and the darkest colour, and 1 being the lowest. It also on this figure has wind speed. So obviously different kilometers per hour that it actually travels. So the highest hurricane speed or tropical storm speed is known for a 250 kilometers per hour type of wind speed. So really you're looking here at your darker shades and starting to see whereabouts these happen. So let's look at question 3. Question 3 asks us to complete the following sentences. Now obviously you have to refer back to figure 1. Now it's worth 2 marks. That is because there are 2 empty spaces. So the greatest number of category 4 tropical storms happen in the something ocean. So this is where you need to think, okay, category 4, 210 kilometers per hour, so it's got to be a darker shade, possibly happening in this region. Where did we say this was before? And really we don't see any in any of the regions, mainly this region. So which ocean is this? Remember, I did say before. Then we move on to the second part. Apart from very strong winds, one other associated weather feature of a category 4 storm is. Now this is again where you can go back to your figure, and we know that a category 4 storm is equal to a certain type of wind speed and wind strength. So complete this sentence. Question 4. You have to give 2 conditions that is needed for a tropical storm to form. So this is where we're looking at how they are made, and it's worth 2 marks. And because you've got to give 2 conditions, that means you've got 1 mark for one and 1 mark for another. So 2 marks in total. So you have to think for this question, how does a tropical storm form? Now remember, a tropical storm is a hurricane, a typhoon, and a cyclone. They are all the same thing. So think about where they're formed. Are they formed on land? Are they formed in the ocean? What temperature do they need to form? What kind of weather conditions are needed? Any type of air pressure? If they're formed over water, how deep does the water need to be in meters? Remember, 2 points for the 2 marks. Okay, question 5. Very similar to question 4, the question we answered before. So this time we've got to give 2 reasons again, but this time we're looking at why tropical storms eventually lose their energy. Now we've broken it down into reason 1 and reason 2. So we have got 1 mark for reason 1 and we'll have 1 mark for reason 2. Now remember, as I said before above, a tropical storm is a hurricane, a typhoon and a cyclone. So obviously now we're thinking, how do they lose that energy? So think to yourself, look at the question above. How do they gain their energy in the first place? Could there be 2 reasons for them to lose their energy associated with any of these features? Remember, we're talking about them losing their energy, so they're going to lose the amount of power they have. They're probably going to have a reduction in wind speed. And we know from our previous figure that is in kilometers per hour. So have a go. 1 reason here and 1 reason below. Right, so question 6. We've got to explain. Now we know that explain means to give reason. Why planning and being prepared is the best option for reducing the effects of a tropical storm. So we know from before that an effect can be positive and negative. We know that a tropical storm is a hurricane, a typhoon, or a cyclone? Now this question is worth 4 marks. So we remember that a 4-mark question is level marked. And we know that to get 1 to 2 marks, we have to give a basic reason. So this is showing limited knowledge. So here you might have a list of how we can plan and prepare for tropical storms. But if you want 3 to 4 marks, which is what we should all be aiming for, you need to give a clear set of planning and preparation options and say how they are going to minimise or reduce the effect. Now remember, an effect can be positive or negative. So think about the effects of a tropical storm. Think about deaths, injury. Okay? Think about loss of jobs. Think about habitats being destroyed. So can you think of 2 ways we can prepare to stop these things from happening? Now remember, it's not enough to list them. You need to say how it will help reduce the effect. So we're looking for it to reduce the effect. So how could we prevent deaths? How can we prevent injury? How can we stop habitats from being destroyed, or at least prevent it from happening? So 2 points, and remember to say how it reduces the effect. Okay, this question is a bit different. This question has got a statement. So an LIC always suffer more when a tropical storm hits. So first of all, let's break this down. So we know a tropical storm is a hurricane, we know it's a typhoon, and we know it's a cyclone. So we know it's related to these 3 things. Now an LIC is a key word you need to understand in geography. So LIC stands for a lower income country. A country that doesn't have a lot of money. Now knowing what this happens, so basically we're saying that low-income countries with not a lot of money, they suffer quite a lot from tropical storms, hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones. Now for this question, they want you to use evidence to support this statement. So you have to, whether you agree with it or not, have to support this statement. And it's worth 6 marks. So again, this question is level marked. For 1 to 2 marks, your answer is going to be quite basic. You might not provide a lot of evidence. Your points might be very, very basic and simple. People die. Homes destroyed. For 3 to 4 marks, your answer is going to be clear. You're starting to show your knowledge. Now that might be place knowledge. You might give some examples. That might be things like facts and figures. Whatever you think is evidence, use it. Now for 5 to 6 marks, your answer is going to be detailed. So you're showing that you not only know and understand your knowledge, but you can apply it to this statement of a lower income country suffering more when a tropical storm hits. Now you've got to think about using place and locational knowledge. That is going to demonstrate you understand way more than not including it. But the key with this question is in this word, evidence. If you do not provide evidence that backs up what you're arguing, you are going to land in 1 to 2 marks with a quite basic answer. If your evidence is clear, but you're not linking it fully to the statement, you're going to land in 3 to 4 marks. But if you provide detail with facts and figures and place names and link it back to the statement, you are going to be within 5 or 6 marks. So, question 8. We're looking at tropical storms that you specifically yourself have studied. Now, we have decided to study Typhoon Haiyan. So this will be the case study you use. Now, the command word in this question is assess the extent to. So we know that assess and the extent means to make a judgment. But not only do we need to make a judgment, we need to provide evidence. Now, we know as geographers, to provide evidence, we include things like facts, figures, as well as place examples. That is the best way to show that you're providing evidence. Now, they want you to provide a judgment and evidence on the fact that we have primary effects, but they are more significant. Now, all that means is more dangerous, if you like, more disastrous. There's going to be more effects than secondary effects. So this is where they're trying to catch you out, because they're trying to show and challenge you to understand what your primary and secondary effects are. So think, a primary effect. What is a primary effect in relation to a tropical storm? Well, it's something that happens as a direct effect. So something has happened because of that tropical storm. Whereas a secondary effect is something that happens indirectly. Now, a secondary effect usually happens because of the primary effect. It's a knock-on effect. So you need to think of including in this question not only direct effects, but what are the knock-on effects, the secondary effects, because of the typhoon or another tropical storm you have studied. So, 9-mark question. We know a 9-mark question is level marked. We know for a level 3 answer, which is between 7 and 9 marks, we have to not only provide detail, we not only need to show our understanding, but we also need to apply our knowledge to the question. So we need to apply all our knowledge of primary effects, secondary effects. Which one is more dangerous? We have to make a judgment. We have to provide evidence. We have to give facts and figures. Now, if you don't give enough detail and understanding and apply your knowledge, you're going to fall into potentially the level 2 category where you get 4 to 6 marks. So this is where your answer might be lacking a bit of detail. So your answer is more clear. But if your answer isn't clear and it falls into basic, you're just saying basic statements without giving facts and figures, you are only going to fall into level 1, which is 1 to 3 marks. Last question on this paper is a cold environments question to test your knowledge of previous learning. So, the reason hot deserts is crossed out is because we don't learn about hot deserts. We learn about cold environments. Now, we specifically have studied Alaska. And again, this question is asking you to assess. Assess means to make a judgment. Now, this question wants you to make a judgment on the importance of management strategies. So think to yourself, what is a management strategy? And which management strategies does Alaska specifically use? Now, the context of this question is they're asking you to look at management strategies, but which ones specifically reduce minimise the risk of environmental damage. So what is environmental damage? Well, environmental damage is when the environment, so things like plants, animals, so we know these as flora and fauna, and their habitats. And how can we reduce the risk to these plants, these animals, and these habitats through management strategies? So think to yourself, what animals can we find in Alaska? What types of plants can we find in Alaska? Now, doesn't have to be on land, could also be in the ocean or the sea. So it doesn't have to just be animals that we find on land. So it could be fish, it could be whales. So for this particular question, it's worth 9 marks. So we know that it is level marked. And for a level marked answer, for 7 to 9 marks, we have to provide detail and apply our knowledge. For 4 to 6 marks, it's clear. Maybe doesn't apply your knowledge as well as you'd hope. And for 1 to 3, it's basic. Limited. Simple statements. If we go back to the question, we're looking at Alaska as our cold environment, but you might have studied a different one. We're assessing and making a judgment about which management strategy is used to reduce the risk of environmental damage. And remember, we're after a winner.